Anyway, sorry,
Yeah,
I go on a
actually,
rant. Borjan knows I go on a rant about this. I just love this topic. So
actually gets me really excited. One a particular aspect is essentially the reputation aspect. Kent spoke a bit about the next door thing, like how there is some gatekeeping here and not everyone, can participate in on it, and how it's difficult maybe to even build their build your own reputation within the community. For me, especially, it's interested what it does, to the human from even a psychological standpoint, and how it incentivizes good behavior. Because like when you have, let's say, this happened, to me, like I see these Uber drivers, with like, I don't know, 4,000 rides, and they have like almost like a 5-star rating or something like that. At a certain point it becomes that rating becomes so important to the person, like they are de-incentivized to, like do whatever deviant behavior or to hurt their client, or to do some bad thing. And I think it's an awesome positive cycle, because it incentivizes for the people to be good, like, hey, take care of your reputation, take care of your people, take care of your neighbors, you're
yeah,
gonna get like, like rewarded, not just, monetary, but with support, like with care. And yeah, like I'm really excited about this, because like
yeah,
through the communities, like these interactions, they happen every day, but they're not being appreciated, like, it only all of the interaction between me and Kent are only stays between me and Kent, unless we share it with you. What if like you could see what's happening with your community? Hey, who I don't know, planted this tree, or who did this good deed? That's an awesome experience, an awesome improvement. And I think a lot more friendships are gonna get forged, a lot more things are gonna get done.
without a doubt. So like I said, I worked in manufacturing for a decade, and when we would work on a project like a copy machine, you look at a copy machine, it actually takes thousands of people to participate in that, and it's not thousands of people in one flat organization. It ends up being a lot of little groups. 3 here, 5 here, 7 here, whatever. And in the context of software, and I mean frequently even hardware development, you end up having what the software world calls scrums, just small teams. 3 to 5 to 7. That's what we would consider the baseline model of what we call the 214 org model. It's that basic common denominator, that basic unit. And but what you're doing is managing the collaborative contributions towards an effort, right? Copy machine or a car or anything. And again, I've been writing a lot about this in my blog that'll go into, it's on Medium, and you can see it listed on our website, but it's going into the 214 org site I'd referenced earlier. But anyway, in the context of manufacturing, there have been a lot of advancements in the last, half century or so around how to really improve processes. And a lot of those are applications of statistical process control. And that's predicated on the basic idea that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, right? Like, I mean, there's some simple measures, which is like, on a scale from 1 to 10, would you rate this as a satisfactory experience? But that's highly subjective. You can do quantitative assessment as well, which is, Kent said that he would clean the latrine within 2 weeks. Did he do so? Yes or no? And if yes was not ticked, then you have some interesting things, right? And you can really do some cool stuff with this. So, because we're doing a blockchain solution, we could technically tokenize the supply chain, which means that we could actually quantify if things had satisfied a certain requirement. For instance, let's say that you're part of a vegan community and you are just not going to buy or sell goods or services unless it satisfies a certain policy as it pertains to the ethical treatment of animals, right? And if you could tokenize the supply chain, you could just know with satisfaction that people weren't mucking with the system, right? So that's some of those measures, like quantitative measures. Anyway, I was actually originally hired to design the reputation economy for BitNation, and they had a pretty interesting approach in that they wanted to create a monetizable reputation, which actually addressed a really interesting dimension on fraud, right? And the way that I did that was actually pretty easy, in that you're not going to earn any more in reputation than you had to pay for the transaction. So again, I come from an anti-fraud security background. Actually, I'm old. I come from a lot of backgrounds, but I spent a lot of time there. So, what I'm implying is that the reputation that you earn is actually a form of revenue. So Borjan had talked about, Lyft or Uber or Airbnb. This would be a version of like having a high reputation that actually earns you money. And here's another thing: you don't get to game our system. We don't actually allow advertisers to change the rankings. The only way to elevate your ranking in the listing is through reputation. So we are making a decision as a company to not accept advertising revenue in the gaming of the system. You have to actually earn the reputation. It's a meritocracy. So in order to do that, you're going to have to perform. And in order to do that, you have to do your reputation. So it's a multi-dimensional reputation that actually generates revenue, but it also elevates your ranking. So if you create a reputation that generates revenue, there's a lot of really cool applications of that. Like if you're in a manufacturing environment, you could technically instrument the operations you have between different groups, and you could create a financial incentive for organizational units to improve their performance. I know that sounds pretty esoteric who don't come from that area, but that's a pretty sophisticated solution. That's a cool thing. I'm Lean Six Sigma trained, which is one of the manufacturing best practices that are used. And so, again, it's a collection of statistical process controls, but a lot of those are built into our reputation economy, which is a multi-dimensional thing. It's a mix between subjective and objective assessments that actually contribute towards the reputation.
When it comes to this reputation, like if you look at it from even like a user point of view, like users are members of a lot of, I don't know, website, like you mentioned something like eBay, there are some freelancers, there are some desk, and I don't know, like even Lyft or Airbnb, all of these kind of different apps, and all of these apps have their own, like 5 stars or reputation,
Right.
like, but when you take a look at them, all of these services are kind of like their own closed companies or something, so you can't easily show or share this reputation with the other people. Like what, you're not gonna take 10 links and send them, hey, this is who I am, I have all of this reputation, all of this. It just doesn't feel smooth, like it doesn't flow.
Right.
More so, maybe on a lot of those pages you need to log in and they don't know your login, so your public needs to be your profile must be public in order for them to do that, and it just doesn't flow. But all of these services, all of these different things, there are actually some things that are daily happening in a community. Hey, Kent is gonna give someone a ride. That's already reputation there. Kent is going to maybe rent a house to someone. Let him stay there. That's another one.
Right.
Kent's like the part-time job for the lady helping her next door. That's your freelancing thing. So all of this reputation, which is being scattered around all of these different services. Here at 214 Alpha, with our solution for your community, you can have it all right there. It won't take like ages to build. If you're a person who cares about providing a good service, and interacting well with people, or your reputation is gonna shine pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, yeah, man, I have a lot to talk about, and we've been talking for a long time, but I really do want to add this because it's important. So as I looked at the reputation economy, because of course, from my perspective, it's not magic, actually. You could actually pull this off. There were a couple of different things that contributed to my design of the reputation economy. One of them, and the way it plays out is it's applications of crypto economic primitives plus data analytics in the context of graphs. That's basically all it is, if you want to know what it really comes to. So I've worked with a lot of graph databases over the years, so you can do some really cool stuff with Dijkstra's algorithm, plus, like I said, crypto economic primitives, if for the nerds that are in the audience. But I had added a few things. One of them is essentially the basis of replicating things like Lean Six Sigma, which would enable small communities to actually run like really efficient large enterprises do. So it's essentially giving away the ability to really, really perform at an accountable level. But then I added another couple of dimensions. One of them is what we call the selvage token. So the background on that is that I had experimented with a lot of these principles within some of the more difficult to manage communities, which are online communities of hackers and trolls and advocates and stuff like that, and people from the Occupy movement. I mean, really, really like the worst case ad hoc situations, collaborations. Like, how do you actually affect a collaboration within people who are ad hoc collaborations of people who are mostly anonymous and might never meet, right? So how do you actually pull that off? And so one of them that came out of is the selvage token. And the way that we quantified that is that if you can come up with a way to effect a statistical reduction in the rates of conflict and arbitration, we pay you for that because it helps optimize our system. So the way that looks in practical terms is think about how attorneys work. They actually monetize a perpetuation of conflict, right? They get charged by the hour, and they have absolutely no incentive to do anything but to perpetuate conflict as long as possible. So let's say that you're going through some sort of dispute. They get a lawyer, you get a lawyer, and the lawyers are just going to keep arguing. They'll probably go get drinks every Friday, but they're just going to keep arguing for as long as you have money, right? And as a consequence, you might actually get an outcome, but it's never peaceable. It's always full of conflict, right? And it actually creates this really kind of a bummer thing, because attorneys end up being conditioned towards the type of people who will manipulate their clients towards a perpetuation of conflict, and it's not really great. So in this context, you could add a dimension that would change it doesn't eliminate the need for lawyers. If people want to keep doing that, they can, right? But you might actually be the person who wants to have a peaceful divorce because it's in the best interest of the kids. Or there could be any other thing. There's this great process that comes from the indigenous community, what is it? What is it called? Restorative justice. I love the thing. Is that you get the thief and the victim to sit down and just talk in really open terms about the implications, like what happened, like what happened when my car was stolen. Well, I wasn't able to go to work for a week, right? And then the perpetrator gets to do it, whatever. Anyway, the rates of recidivism actually goes down. It's actually cost effective, and it actually does a pretty effective job. So that would be a great example of a program that would be highly competitive in the context of the salvage token. So people could continue to monetize conflict because people want that stuff. But, for those who don't, it actually changes the competitive model, but it also creates a stream of revenue that is not really accounted for in our existing economic system. Is that you could technically get a salvage-based crypto revenue within this economy, and it would actually elevate your competitiveness. So let's say that you wander into a community with your restorative justice wisdom, and you would just knock them dead because you're bringing a lot of effective resolution in a peaceable manner. That's a kick-ass thing. I kind of dig that. The other one is the WEF token, and WEF is, they both come from this sewing world, right? Obviously, or the weaving. But the WEF one is, if you can come up with ways to effect a increase in the statistical reputation of others, then we also help cover that. And it's an optimization of our system. But man, between those two, that's actually pretty interesting. Let's say that you are, an organization that works with the houseless or whatever, and maybe they've got some solutions, some ideas, and maybe you put together a small token economy that gives them incentives for helping elevate their reputation within the community. And maybe that brings the homeowners more interest in hiring them to do labor and doing things like that, and have closed that gap. Well, I mean, I had run a nonprofit before. So in doing that, the nonprofit now has a way of showing statistically that they're actually doing something, which helps them with their fundraising. So, anyway, what was cool about this is putting together this reputation economy. As we started talking to indigenous communities, they said, that's our values. Those are our cultural values. Like, you just codified our cultural values, which enables us to create a self-sustaining financial economy without having to adopt your Western economy values, which is great. I mean, they could continue doing capitalism if they want. I have nothing against capitalism. I'm a big fan for what it's worth. I would just say that it's insufficiently optimized, right? So all I'm saying is that you could replicate capitalism as we know it within the context of a closed economy, and then enable an optimization for those who opt into it. It's not something, this is my beef with universal basic income, is that if you impose it as a tax, not everybody's interested in it. But if something like this, you could replicate the functional benefits of UBI without it being imposed as a tax. It would just incentivize people to be creative about coming up with solutions. If the community doesn't want to come up with solutions, that's their thing, right? It's all voluntary. So in that context, the solution satisfies the non-aggression principle, and I mean, I think it's a pretty good thing. And like I said, I could talk about this particular topic for hours. So.
I would say from my perspective, it's pretty similar. I just like to call it like these positive cycles. Well, where the good values that people hold, get integrated with the positive transactions and everything, and it just like functions like. Like people love helping each other, like every one of us is gonna need help at some time. We like getting the good good food, good service, everything, like, and it's all there, it's all maybe next door, we just like don't know it because like there is no the reputation, there is no way to interact with that or get in touch with these people or even facilitate the trade between each other directly without some third party I don't know, like website that no one is able to like know or use or need to sign up to all of that. So I feel we at 214 Alpha really trying to make this process easy and smooth for the people who are even not that technical. They are only able to, they will be able to use an app which is simple and easy to use for their community, you know. And it's gonna be the people that you already know, and maybe some that you don't, but who also have been part in your community. It's your neighbors, it's your, you know, your friends, you know. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about like making this happen into a reality and creating this positive cycle so that everyone can even keep and improve their values, and their communities can thrive.
Yeah, man, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can talk about this a lot because we do, and we're pretty passionate about it. And the way
Yeah.
this works is just contact us, and you'll find that most of what we talk about is not technical. Like, I mean, honestly, the first press question you'll get from me, I'll just go through those 7 phases. Just like, you sound outraged, but what's your vision, right? And then do you have an advocacy? Like, what's your basically what's your exec team? Uh, and uh, and if you have those, then yeah, we could talk about fundraising. I have some pretty ideas of how to fundraise. If you have articulated your vision properly and it addresses your problem, then fundraising is pretty easy. It's not sales, it's not marketing, it's education. So boom, you got the first four. And we know how to build, and we can teach you that. So, I mean, you'll find most of what I talk about is really just coaching people into be effective advocates. Um, and, uh, uh, and, and, you know, it's there. It's like the solution's already there. We can't push it up to the central institutions because they're just having a hard time agreeing on how to shuffle chairs on the deck of the Titanic as it sinks, right? Like I'm just saying, just focus on your community. There's a lot to do there. And I like talking to Helen about this. Helen talks about like part of what causes frustration within the system is that people feel they have no recourse. I totally agree with that. And Helen, again, is a person that does education with us. Again, it's 214alpha.com/education. But a lot of the education is helping people calibrate their sort of circle of concern and their circle of influence. It's like, just focus on what you can do. And it doesn't mean just stick to your neighborhood. Your community might actually be global. It could be, transgendered vegans that are shorter than 5 feet tall. I mean, I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter to me. I belong to all kinds of weird communities. So, no judgment, right? You'll get to know me. I just have all kinds of people I belong to. But, you got to be able to make that self-sufficient on your terms. And that's what we're about. So, I mean, anyway, if you don't have anything else to say, Borjan, we should probably end it because I think we intended 5 to 7 minutes, but as is usually the case, it ended up going for like an hour or something. So,
Yeah,
5
I
thumbs
feel
up. I was telling Borjan he looks like a handsome version of me. I kind of dig it. Like, it's kind of good having a backup. Yeah. Anyway, I'm looking forward to another discussion. But anyway, cheers.